Tuesday, January 12th. At this time, I'd like to invite Pastor Lord for our invocation.
Thank you, Mayor Council. Lord, we just thank you that we can come to you and realize your love and your desire for things to go good in the city. Lord, we just pray for our hearts to be pure, that your divine wisdom can flow, Lord God, and make the decisions that needs to be made. And Lord, we want to just thank you for this council, our fire department, our police department, Lord, those that just give themselves to protect the city. And so we ask that you just watch over those first responders. And Lord, our heart's cry is we might know how to live in peace with one another in our city, Lord God, and that we would just know how to look out and take care of one another. So we just lift this meeting up, Lord, and just pray that there'd just be a unified effort of decisions that would just move the city forward in prosperity and peace. In Jesus' name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor William Dittmer. Here. Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Councilman Tom McClary.
Here.
Councilman Tom Kinsella.
Here virtually.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager Leonard Tossman.
Here.
Thank you. And this goes to the city attorney. Same as before, we have a quorum here, and it's my understanding by the rules that Mr. Kinsella can appear telephonically as we have a quorum.
Yes, that's correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve two sets of council minutes. So I was going to open the floor for that.
Motion to approve the meetings 12/8 and 12/15.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to comments from our general public. There are two folks that have signed up, and then I'm going to allow anyone else to speak that would like to by show of hands. I'm going to start at the top of the list. Mr. Thomas Brown, welcome.
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court. Please pay attention to the following, which is factual, but you will find some of it hard to believe. In 1980, the builder of Candlelight Homes presented a development plan to the city for the building of the Candlelight Subdivision. It included a 10-foot wide perpetual public easement at the end of Candlelight Court to allow access to the lake for all residents. The plan was approved by the City Council and the Mayor. Then the plan was recorded in Pasco County records. The plan and the public easement have been in effect for more than 40 years. New people moved into 7460 and put a no trespassing sign on the easement and put a chain across the entrance to the easement. Over the past 2 months, I have written to the city manager, the mayor, the vice mayor, all the council members, the head of code enforcement, the city attorney, and the chief of police. I pointed out a violation of City Ordinance 05-536 F4, and nothing has been done to correct it. A resident cannot put a chain across the entrance of a public easement, but there is one at the end of Candlelight Court. The city should not allow anyone to put a no trespassing sign on a public easement, but there is one at the end of Candlelight Court. I have offered 9 forms of proof that the 10-foot wide easement is a public easement, yet I have been informed that I will be arrested if I go on the public easement to fish as I have for the past 38 years. What is going to be done to reopen the public easement to the public? Do I have to fear arrest if I go on the easement with my grandchildren again to fish?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The next person that signed up is Pastor Lord. Welcome. Come on up.
Thank you, sir. Leonard Lord, I pastored 8114 Leo Kidd Avenue. And Chief, welcome to Port Richey.
Thanks, sir.
Heard about you. Good to meet you, and Lord bless you, sir. Just want to thank the mayor and council for just being able to work with you. I know together we can just bless our city. Just really want to thank the staff, all the help they've been and what we've done in the city, and particularly our police department and fire department. And just a great thanks to the fire department. I mean, our Christmas giveaway and dinner was just such a blessing, and they were there, and all the gifts that had been donated. I never saw so many people turn out. We didn't know with the pandemic, but things seemed to go very well. People were blessed, and so together we just want to say thank you, and just tell us more how we can serve, and let us know if there's any more we can do. And Lord bless you. I know all of you are very busy, so thank you for giving the extra time to serve here in the city. And just remember, where there's selfish ambition and strife, there's confusion and every evil work. But where there's a pure heart and peaceable, gentle people, God will flow and people will be blessed. So thank you all very much, and Lord bless you. And hope you're having a great new year, and we're going to look for a good one, okay?
Thank you, Pastor Lord.
Bless you all. Thank you.
That's all that signed up, but I see several people from the general public that are here. I wanted to welcome everybody and see if anybody else wanted to speak on this, just for a general comment. If not, anyone will have an opportunity to speak after any of the items that we discuss. So if anyone wants to speak now, let me know. By show of hands, I don't see any. And if not, when we get to other items on the agenda, we'll readdress everything. At this time, I'm going to open it to comments from our city manager.
I know later you've got staff reports from each of our department heads who are here tonight. But one thing I guess it's both from a general city perspective as well as CRA, and this coming, actually Friday a week, the 22nd, just remind everyone that's when the bids for channels 1 and 26A will be opened. It seems like since we gave more time for bidders, contractors, and so forth to this time, we weren't rushing it as much, if you will. So that 90 days apparently has enabled some other folks, because I knew that time we also had our Thanksgiving, also Christmas, and more recently the New Year's vacations, holidays, if you will. So I expect that you're going to receive some bids. So Mr. Duke's going to be busy with the WOD and the dredge project, as well as a number of other things. So just so that you'll know, they'll be open at 2 o'clock on that Friday afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Sossaman. Any questions from the board? I first wanted to open up with comments from Mayor Council. The first thing I wanted to say is we came to a crossroads in the city where we needed leadership and management. We wound up with Mr. Sossaman on an interim basis, and we couldn't have had better service and better productivity and better leadership as an interim. So I wanted to thank you on behalf of myself, the council, and all the citizens for everything you've done for the city.
It's been my pleasure. People like Pastor Lord and Ms. Burke and Ms. Rodriguez and a number of others have, they've made it pleasant. They talk to me on occasion. The staff has been very well. We did rush in that 6-week time frame when I was first here to put together a budget to get to you that was balanced, and try also to figure out how to not adversely impact the CRA budget anymore. And so I think we came to a really good a good position on it. Both it's the general fund, but reserves, they're healthier. The CRA is still healthy, and I know you've got a number of projects that are lined up over the next couple of years. And I look forward to reading about it from wherever I may be. But thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to serve the citizens of Port Richey.
Thank you again, Mr. Sossaman. The other thing I wanted to do is welcome our new fire chief. So
Yes.
thank you for stepping up into that position, and welcome to the city.
I'm happy to be here.
And you come with a brand new shiny fire truck
I
from
do,
work.
I know. I inherited a brand new truck the day I walked in the door.
So thank you for serving.
Thank you so much. I look forward to meeting everybody individually too.
And that's all I had for general comment. So I was going to pass it off to.
No further. Thank you very much for echoing. Thank you very much. Welcome. I have nothing further.
It's been said, thank you and welcome.
Welcome, and goodbye. And that's all I have. Actually, I do have one more thing. It goes to Captain. We talked to the chief at the last meeting. I can't remember the name, Siesta Lane, or the property that's full of trash over there. Do you have an update on that?
Yes, sir. The process has gone through. The condemnation has been placed by Dallas. The yard has been cleaned up thoroughly, and it's still going through the process to find a resolution for the structure and remnants inside.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kinsella, anything?
I don't, thank you.
Okay. I guess, Mr. Sossaman, before you go, there was one other thing that I wanted to ask you. One of the things that I saw, there was a list of different department heads and employees that you had, and there was one position that it said interim before. It was, I think, the finance director position. And I wanted to know if that was something that had been advertised yet, or if you were waiting for the new city manager or permanent city manager to advertise for that potentially.
It had been advertised going way back, I guess, almost 2 years ago, because whenever I came to Port Richey back in June, I believe it was at that time, that position had been vacant for some 19 months. And we had received just a couple applications, and in my opinion, looking at them, and I also had, if you'll remember, George Zetline, who pulled out of retirement to work with us on the budget. He looked at them and he says, the same thing I said. They didn't have any public sector experience, and I talked to a few of them, not just read their resume or anything like that, but also talked to them and explained to them what the position entailed. And the two that I talked to actually indicated they didn't realize it was that involved, if you will, in terms of actually putting together budgets and so forth. I'm not sure what they were thinking, but that's okay. I've seen that before. But Tony is interim position right now as your finance director, and if Mr. Duke wants to make it permanently, then he could. If he decides to do something else, or if this board wants to talk with him about it, I'm sure you will, and you can go any direction that you like.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else have any follow-up questions? Okay. With that, I wanted to go on to the next item, which are comments from boards and committees. And I saw someone sign up for that, so come on up. It's Ms. Rodriguez.
Linda Rodriguez, 5917 Lantern Court. We had our meeting last Thursday. Just wanted to let everybody know we're going to clean up Olsner Park on January 30th at 9 a.m. So you're all welcome to join us. We haven't done it in quite some time, so
What's the date and
Olsner
time?
Park on January 30th at 9 a.m. So anybody that would like to join us would welcome the help, of course. We're also going to try to paint. We're going to find the paint and start going with the kiosks like we did last year. I think it was in March or April we did it. So we're going to try to go with that as well. We did have a citizen come to our meeting, and I wanted to bring it up that he was concerned about the pavilion has a lot of cracks in it, and he felt it was a potential hazard, a trip hazard for people, that there was washout on it. I was planning on going and looking, but honestly, I didn't get a chance. I'm sorry.
Which pavilion?
At Waterfront Park.
Waterfront. Okay.
So if maybe somebody can go and check that out and see there's like 11 cracks, or I don't know. He went into quite a lot of detail about it. So that might be interesting to look at. And then someone else was mentioning the playground also has a lot of loose bolts and unkept and grass growing where it's, so maybe we need to, that's a fairly new playground for the kids. So maybe we would also want to look at that. So those were two things that were brought up by residents I thought I would bring up.
The waterfront park playground?
Yes.
Okay.
mhm. So I wanted to bring that up as well, so we can follow up on that.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, and that's all I had. Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez. That's all that I had signed up from committees and boards. Next up, I was looking for a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion for consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At this time, we're going to move on to council business. The first item up for business is department head reports. And I was going to turn that over to Mr. Sossaman for introduction, if I may.
Thanks, Mayor. Since he's the newest guy on the block, so to speak, I like to call on Chief. Oh yeah, Chief. You're well spoken. They've already heard you tonight. But starting from your direction, then to your immediate right, obviously is Captain Koch. He can provide his, and then Dallas and Sean can bring up the last part of it, if you will.
Excellent, thank you.
Well, Sarah, I was hoping that podium was going to keep me out of your line of fire, but obviously that didn't work. For the fire department, the last 30 days, we had about 99 calls. We completed 12 inspections. Budget year so far, we're up to 290 calls and 36 inspections. For the agency update, I've been working with IT, Pasco County, Emergency Communications, and the police department. We're trying to, for the CAD dispatching, the computer-aided dispatching process. Part of that is renaming and renumbering some of our units so they're recognized within the system. And that's been taken care of already. And also I have a meeting on Thursday to make some unit recommendations. Basically, when a call comes in, that call has to be recognized by the computer, and then that recognition says, okay, that just takes a fire truck. This takes a fire truck and the boat. So we have to make those recommendations to it. We're going to meet on Thursday to try to tackle the rest of those. But the CAD for the fire department, the computer-aided dispatch for the fire department is up and running, and we're just tweaking it at this point. So that was a big step in the right direction, finally. The new fire engine is here. We had a bunch of the equipment mounted. It was delivered, accepted. We're starting the crew training prior to putting it in service. I'm going to spend a couple of weeks making sure they're familiar with all the new aspects of the truck and the new technology that comes with it. And then we'll get that in service. And then prior to the service date, I'll make sure you're aware, because I know that you guys wanted to do a blessing of the fleet, and so I'll make sure that when we're getting close to that point, I'll give you guys a heads up, and we'll come with a date for that, if that's okay.
Yep.
And we're also working on the third engine placement and use policies. So that's already 80% done, that whole plan. As far as the inner workings of the agency, I'm reorganizing agency roles and duties. I had to balance the critical load that was left over by the loss of our deputy chief. So we're working on trying to rebalance everybody's workload. Some had a lot of administrative, some had a lot of labor-intensive work, so I had to balance those loads out and try to help that team out a little bit. And in the process, I'm also backfilling some of the positions with part-timers to try to help the administrative workload get accomplished, some of the things that we were behind on. And next thing was computerizing the agency processes. We're still trying to work on updating and computerizing our processes. Like one is like payroll. I mean, payroll was on paper for a while there, so we're still trying to get that done. We're still having some issues. We don't have an IT department, so some of it's taking a little longer than we had hoped, but hope to have that accomplished and done within the next 2 pay periods. And as far as the boat goes, I don't know if some of you may have noticed, you saw the fireboat out on the water the last couple of days. That's going to continue for a little while, trying to give them, I had the Coast Guard coming up, and the Coast Guard's been training all the full-time and part-time members, taking our training to a whole nother level with them. So they've all been really excited about that exposure. And then this is just the start of a series of training evolutions to take the tools that we have now and their capabilities to a whole nother level. That's it for the fire department.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Okay, during the month of December, for call statistics, police department generated approximately 949 calls for service that be it self-initiated or citizen-initiated calls for service. Among them, we had a total of 6 burglaries, various type business, commercial, or conveyance, approximately 9 thefts throughout the city, 30 traffic crashes, 297 traffic stops, impounded 18 vehicles as a result of violations during those traffic stops, had 5 drug violations and 7 noise complaints, as well as 19 alarms. For other activities that we've been engaging in, the police department's initiated a community watch camera program to which you can register your home surveillance cameras if they capture footage in or near your residence. In the event that something happens that way, we could potentially use that to solve other crimes. We managed to secure and confirm some dates with the Pasco Sheriff's Office for use of their firing range to conduct rifle training qualifications. We're continually updating and modifying our current policies and procedures where they need to be. Working on inventory for the items within the storage rooms and or storage locations, getting rid of some stuff that's old, antiquated, and no longer usable. In the process of preparing to do a full audit of the property evidence room. As of the 5th, we did flip the switch, so to speak, and went live on the CAD system, as Chief said. Indeed, there are still some bugs that we have to work out in procedural, making the adjustment from the old system to the new. But we are in fact live and utilizing it. Let's see, continue monitoring intelligence for protesters, and especially with the current trends that are going on, potential threats that could occur in or around or near the city. Let's see here. Coordinating with Newport Richey PD to try and provide a little bit better coverage on the waterways as the spring, summer months are approaching us. Let's see, continuing to schedule additional training with the State Attorney's Office, as well as participating with Florida Department of Transportation grant through Institute of Police Technology Management for pedestrian traffic safety. We're also working on small revitalization projects around the PD, conducting in-house joint training, and scheduling off-site classes for a variety of different subjects for officers. And the final final item that I have on the list here is we've also been working on the process to put out a bid for a new vessel and for the patrol capabilities.
Thank you. Any questions from?
Update on the cars?
I have an email waiting to get another response back. The gentleman from the upfitter company, I had him here 2 weeks ago, give or take a couple days. We actually physically walked around the existing car to ensure that the programming settings are going to be how we want them, and that they are in the process of physically doing the install of equipment into the cars. Unfortunately, with the timing that everything got ordered with the backup, there are apparently many agencies that got in line in front of us to be scheduled for the upfitting process, and that's what's been postponing the equipment being installed.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Mr. Kinsella?
Yes, I had a couple of quick questions for the captain. Currently, what are the open positions? Maybe I missed it. Open positions within the police department, how many?
Right now, the only open position is the code enforcement position, and we are generally looking for a part-time on-call dispatcher.
And can I ask that question to our fire chief?
As far as positions go, one of the things I was tackling is part-timers. We have 18 slots. We only had about 8 of them filled, and about 5 of those were, the active ones. So every time people needed time off, it was a little bit of a struggle. So I've just actually approved several applications to be processed to fill those part-timer slots. The only position that we're critically missing is the deputy chief. Like I said, I think I'm probably the only department head that doesn't have a number 2 or a secretary to help out. So we got to work on trying to come up with a plan to fill that vacated position. I know it's still in the system, it's just not in the budget for this year. So in the meanwhile, I'm just going to use part-timers, backfill, pull the veteran captains up to do the veteran things, and use the part-timers or the drivers to do the non-essential stuff that just needs to be taken care of.
That's all for me, thank you.
I have a question. On the noise complaints, were they private or business? And how many were they? I missed the number.
The number was 7. I don't have the breakdown with me, but I do recall looking at it. I believe it was about half and half between private and business. And I do recall, I want to say it was the 22nd of December. Don't hold me to the date without looking at it. To where there was a couple of them for one location that were back-to-back within a close time proximity on that same date.
Thank you.
Back-to-back, was that a private residence or a business?
I believe that was a business.
You had mentioned the cars. Is there a time frame overall for the cars? Are we weeks, months?
In talking to the gentleman from the upfitting company, I'm hoping that they'll be here just after the turn of the month.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. I think, is that all we have?
That's all.
Okay. If there's no further questions,
The building department, for the month of December, we performed 118 inspections with a 98% pass rate. We took in 105 permits. We've issued some more Vela Bay COs for their buildings. We currently have 3 remaining under construction, which are due to be finished the end of February. That should close that whole project out. We've had some projects come in for discussion, which is the Cody River development, and we've started discussions with a possible new owner for Seaside Inn who wants to basically scrape the property and rebuild on that area. That just started within the last month or so. Another one is the possibility of vacating Bridge Street, but in the Catches area. That paperwork has been received, it hasn't come before council. It will be being brought forward in the future. We've got submitted for 3 new single-family residents. We're about 90% complete with our BTRs. Late notices have been sent out this week for everyone to get them taken care of. Then the only other thing we have going is our website for the city. We're working on getting that updated, and the contract that we had, the individual resigned this week. Said he cannot support us in taking care of it. We need to find another contractor this time. That's it for the building department.
any questions or comments? Mr. Kinsella, any questions, comments for building department?
Nothing.
Okay.
The vacating of Bridge Street, that comes before council because that's a big item, Bridge Street. It does, right? Well, vacations come before that, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Is that all we have? Okay. And then last department head, I'm going to go back to Mr.
Yeah, last but not least,
Okay.
the Public Works and Public Utilities. We've done all our maintenance, our normal maintenance on the parks. Presently, we are doing pressure washing, we are doing painting, we are doing, there was a lot of vandalism when we opened the parks back up. So we're correcting that as we find it. We do know that Nick's Park bathroom leaks, we're fixing it. We know Waterfront Park leaks, we're fixing that also. We've been doing all our work orders for the services, our meter reads. we just finished mowing the city for this month. We can always do it as we need it. We've been ditch clearing the month of December and the first part of January. We've been working on Old Post, down Wilkes. You can notice now that if you stop at Ritchie and Wilkes, that drainage ditch that goes back down Bay Boulevard is not as high as it is or used to be. We actually do have good flow down by Avila Bay. We did clear around Coons Road. Just recently, we put the new roof on the bathroom at Pier. It had rotted by just bad building. We've installed 120 foot of drainage pipe on Bay Boulevard under the driveways to help with the drainage, and we also had a lot of tree intrusion. We've installed we have one last meter to install at Avila Bay, waiting on the contractor to get a tap done. Somehow that was mistaken and was done, otherwise we're done. We're just gonna go back and do maintenance for whatever during the COs to charge him for damage that his contractors do. 5812 Siesta Lane, which is a question that was brought up to Captain Koch. That was boarded for security of the residents, and the yard was clear of debris. That was also taken out and turned over to the building department. We have taken over the islands, the normal city islands, and we've also taken over the islands on US 19. So we are maintaining them, we are clearing them. That is now belonging to the city. It was figured prudent that instead of costing $20,000 a year to have somebody mow the grass and do the hedges, like we can do it ourselves. To answer Ms. Rodriguez, which it's up on my board, we are cleaning the parks and we are mulching. The plans are just to put all new mulch in, especially now that the weather's colder, it's not as busy. The weather's a little tough on everybody. They don't want to be in the parks, so all the parks are planning on being all remulched. We are going to fix the fence. As most of you know, at the park, you have a white fence and a steel fence and a green fence. That's the older park, and the new park that we just redid a couple months ago. We're going to fix all that fence and all make it right. Brasher Park will be done the same way.
Thank you. I had a question for you. One of the things that happened not so long ago, as we're still in the pandemic, is you were tasked with trying to keep up with sanitizing and cleaning the bathrooms. And I haven't heard any complaints, so I couldn't be happier. How is that going? Are you able, or have you been able to keep up with that task?
We have, sir. We are doing a lot of damage to our stainless steel fixtures because of the bleach. We are toning down the bleach because we burn through Fastenal. They ran out of bleach. They couldn't get us. They'd get me 1 or 2 gallons every other month. We do have bleach, chlorine, 12% chlorine solution back at the water plant. So we're actually taking that and mixing it, and we're actually toning it down because my Parks and Rec guy that was actually getting help, and he does most of this on his own. But we are pulling people from Public Works and Utilities and myself to go in and help him clean. We are toning it down because we are taking the stainless steel off of some of these fixtures.
And that's been on a daily basis?
Yes, sir, every day, even on the weekends.
Excellent, thank you. That's all I had.
I was just going to ask about any updates on that US 19 and Road project there.
Sir, that was left to Mr. Foss, and I don't know where it went from there.
I haven't heard back from the engineer lately, so I will contact him tomorrow, find out what the story is and where it's going. Get that underway.
I just don't want that to go by the wayside, because that's part of that whole WOD thing, make a big difference.
Yes, sir, that's still on my board. It's just a matter of, we have to have an engineer of record.
Thank you.
Mr. Kinsella, any questions, comments?
Not at all, thank you.
From a utility perspective, the water, the wells that we have are all operational. Any issues for providing water? What is kind of the status of the city supplying its own water, and how much do we buy from Newport Ritchie at this point, or anything of that nature?
We are buying the minimum that is under contract. Right now, presently, we are under pumping our wells. We have plenty water in our tanks, and per my plant operations, we are actually producing very good water, and we are under pumping because of the demand's not as high. which is surprising considering everybody's home.
Excellent. Any further questions?
I do have one more thing.
Okay.
It's okay. Mr. Mayor and Mr. City Manager, I got information right before I came into the meeting that we received approval for the supplemental funding grant for the coronavirus, pays for the sprayer and some of the other procedural things we were taking care of, and supplies from Jordan Sneed from the Department of Health. So that's been approved, but I need to meet with you, Mr. Sossman, and Mr. Mayor, because apparently you have to have called a SAM account to log into that thing, and then so they could finish the approval process. So I didn't know if on Thursday we can probably work that out, if you would be available on Thursday, if I can set up a meeting and
I'll be
get that
available,
taken care
so
of.
you guys just contact me, and
Okay.
I'll meet you wherever you guys want to meet.
I'll send you an email reminding you, and you can let me know what time works for you, sir. On Thursday, okay.
Thank you. Is it all for department head reports?
I got a couple of things. I got a couple items I just wanted to add, Mr. Mayor. Recently, we've between myself, the police department, and fire department, we've implemented Archive Social, which is it's a social media and website archiving database that going forward we'll be able to archive all our posts, city website posts, city Facebook posts through all three entities. That way that if this is for public record requests and whatnot, then in case that there's any of that information needs to be recalled, going through this company, through this entity, we'll be able to archive all that information. Our voting has moved forward. Our advertising for voting this year is out. We have 2 seats that are up. Councilman Kinsella's and Councilman McClary's seats are up this year. The ad is in the paper. The information is also available on the city website and city Facebook, and all information can be obtained through my office. Our upcoming meetings for January, we have a Port Authority Board meeting scheduled for the 19th of this month. And then, of course, the only other meeting that we have is our second council meeting, which is going to be on the 26th. And that'll be our first meeting with the city manager, Michael John Dute. Lien searches are something that I maintain through my office throughout the year. For last year, for 2020, I had over 412 lien searches come through our office. We do charge for those lien searches, and at a minimum, which would be would be at the $50 per lien search. We collected over $20,000 for our lien searches. And then the final thing is that I've been in contact with our department, the Department of Ethics in the state of Florida. Form 1s will be going out periodically in the next few months. Right now, I'm processing all the information and sending it out to them.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions or comments? Mr. Kinsella, any questions, comments?
No.
Okay. With that, that closes out department head reports. I didn't see anyone that had signed up for that from the general public. We're not really voting on anything, so I don't know if we would open that generally to the public. But does anyone want to speak on department head issues? Seeing no hands, we're going to move on. The next item up for council business was the discussion of city department organizational review, which was something that was recommended. What I wanted to make a suggestion is that we pass this to the next couple meetings so new city manager can come in and get a feel for the different positions and be part of that organizational review. As I think as we have new management come into the city, that's probably a discussion that we should have with him, if anyone's opposed to that.
I asked to have it put on the agenda, and I have no problem with waiting for Mr. Newton.
Yeah, I agree. It should be tabled until we can get a full.
Absolutely, he needs to be here.
Okay.
And I agree as well.
Okay, so by consensus, we're going to table that to a later council meeting. The next item is item 5, which is board and committee policy discussions, which is something that I asked to be placed on. One of the things that I wanted to do is just an overview of our committees and boards. First of all, I'd like to say that we've been really fortunate as we live in a community where we have a lot of active residents that volunteer their time for the betterment of the city. And as a result, we get a lot of board and committees that make recommendations that are invaluable for council and for mayor, vice mayor, and everybody when we are looking at different issues that come before council. One of the policies that I wanted to, there's two policies that I wanted to see if we could implement. One is that when there's a new application for a board or committee, number one, that there's a disclosure from the city if there's any active applications at the time. And really the goal is not to have citizens that want to participate in a board based on a specific item or pending application that's already been pending. So I think that we should look at implementing a policy to have anyone that applies for a board or a committee, number one, that the council be noticed if there's any pending applications, and number two, that person, if they're going to be on that board or committee, not start any of the meetings until any pending applications have come to a conclusion. And what that will prevent is anyone from the public sitting on a board or committee for a specific application or purpose, as opposed to sitting for the general good of the community. And I wanted to know if anyone had any opposition to those two policies being implemented for any new applicants for any boards or committees.
Can I talk?
Go ahead, of course.
It's more of a question. You said a pending application, and I'm using this as an example. So if I have a house and I'm going for a variance, are you saying that if I apply to planning and planning board, apply to the planning board, I have to disclose that I have a variance coming in for my house?
No.
What do you mean by the disclosure of the upcoming?
Of any applicant. So let's presume that there's an application for a variance, whether it's your house or anybody else's. If that application is pending and you as a citizen want to come into that board, that you shouldn't start until after that application is no longer pending. In other words, it's already come to a conclusion.
You want to clear the docket before they start.
Correct. And what that will prevent is any citizens from coming onto a board or committee for the sole purpose of intervening with an active application. That's the goal, that's the purpose.
Have we had any problems like this?
Well, I think in the past people have been able to kind of climb on boards with pending applications, and I think as a policy reason that we should certainly avoid allowing that for future.
I'm not so upset or concerned about a pending application, because you are getting a couple issues. One, the board is just an advisory board. There's regularly, council has gone against the advice of the advisory board or has gone in favor of the advisory board. It's just that, an advisory board. It's a non-binding position. So even those people who come on, they are not, they're essentially representing their opinion, and their opinion theoretically is the opinions of the surrounding residents. Again, it's non-binding. As I've been sitting here, there's been several times that we voted against the recommendations of our board. It seems like we're putting an extra layer of difficulty to get onto a board that we're trying to get people involved with. And let's say, for instance, whatever brings that person on board, whatever their motive is, I would have a bigger problem of them, jumping onto the board, get through that docket, and then jumping back off again, which to my knowledge hasn't happened at all. That may be a reason to implement something like that. But right now, it seems like we're trying to solve a problem that we haven't encountered yet, really. And I just don't want to put a lot of additional burden on boards and committees when we're trying to fill them as it is to fix a problem that we don't have. necessarily.
And I'll give an example. There was a person that applied for a board or committee that came just before us recently, and that person, there was already a pending application. The person that had applied lived directly across the street and was adamantly opposed to the project. And if I was aware of that when I voted that person on the board, that there was a pending application, that they lived across the street, that they were adamantly opposed, I probably wouldn't have voted for that person to be on that board at that time. I would have wanted them to come on after that application had been cleared. That having been said, I don't think it's a widespread issue. I just think that two things should happen. Number one, that it should be disclosed to us. So we should know if there's a pending application when someone applies for a board or a committee. Because I wasn't even aware that that was pending at the time that we voted for that particular applicant. But number two, that any pending applications, particularly under circumstances where you have someone coming in that has a vested interest, those applications should be cleared out before that person with a vested interest comes in as a board or committee member, is all I'm saying.
But here's the other problem. Did that person come on solely to either vote for or, what was the motive for them coming on board? Now, was it a coincidence or was it a sole purpose? What I'm trying to do is, let's say it's happenstance.
It could be. I don't know the person's motive.
And I just don't want to put in a lot of, I'm against putting in a lot of red tape, for lack of a better term, onto something where we're trying to get people, excited about joining the boards and committees of our city. Because if I wanted to join in, I went, all right, so let's get going. Oh, I'm sorry, well, we have this 3-month, we just had this project come up. It just got tabled for another session, and it just got denied, but it's coming back in, so you can't come back on for another 3 months. Oh, that's kind of a buzzkill on their part, but that's very feasible. I mean, talk to Dallas. There probably has been some issues. Well, maybe not. We're pretty lenient, but there are definitely some planning and zoning board issues that can go on for months on end. And if we're waiting for a docket to clear, and I'll put on a different issue. Let's say for some reason, magically, 3 of our board members from planning and zoning have to go, but we have 3 more people to fill. Well, now we can't pass something in planning and zoning, and I'm picking on planning and zoning, because we don't have a quorum, and then we can't fill it because we can't clear the table.
Well, that's different. If there's not a quorum, I think you'd have to fill it. But where you already have a quorum and you have someone applying, I don't see any harm in having the person wait until whatever active applications have already been concluded. And that takes out any appearance of impropriety within the board, but it also gives us, when those recommendations come in from the boards, we know that the people weren't there for a specific reason one way or the other, for or against.
What if the person's already on the board and the project goes up across the street and they hate it?
That's a different issue.
But it's the same condition.
Correct, but you can't control an application coming in while you already sit on a board. What you can control is someone climbing on a board at the time that the application's pending for the sole purpose of, or for the purpose of voting one way or the other because they have a vested interest. And that's the only thing I want to make sure that we steer clear of.
I mean, I agree. I think there should be a disclosure from the board as to what's on the docket.
Okay.
So that's part of the decision-making process that we can go through as a council. Whether it's viable or not, at least it gives us an opportunity to ask the person the question. However, making them disclose and making them hold off, I think we're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist, and then we're possibly creating new problem.
And you misunderstood, not having the person disclose anything that's applying to the whatever board, but the city should say that there's an application pending or not pending, or if there are any. In other words, we should know about any pending applications at the time that we vote someone in or out of a board, or into a board, I should say. We don't really vote people out, or never have. So it's really two-pronged. I wanted the disclosure because I want to know if someone's applying to a board, if there's pending applications, and then if there's any connection between the person applying and whatever the pending application already is. I want to know that coming in, okay? And that's just simply a disclosure issue. Prong 2 is whether or not we want to limit the timing for people coming on. And like I said, I really don't like the idea of people coming on to a board or committee while there's pending applications, particularly if they have a vested interest in whatever that application is. I really don't like the idea of someone having a vested interest on a pending application, being able to get onto a board and then vote one way or the other. I don't like that at all. And so that's why I raised the issue.
I was gonna say, I'm okay with disclosure. If somebody has an open application, that seems fair to say. But I would just assume that, like any other board, they would recuse themselves if it applied to them. So I think just disclosure alone is just a good idea for somebody trying to push something through. That's fine. But I don't think we need to go through all the steps like Ms. McCleary said.
Okay.
I kind of agree. I think the chairman of each committee or board is the one that's going to be aware of who's applying to that board or committee and whether or not they have an interest in it. I'd like to see them come and introduce themselves to the council, because quite often a lot of them get appointed to positions and never come and see us. So maybe if they came up and saw us and we could ask them a few questions about their interest in the board or something, that would be great too. Then you could ask for the same thing that you're asking for.
That would probably solve a lot of the issues if they were here to say what the interest was and whether or not there's any specific interest in any.
So then maybe all we need to do is just change the procedure that when we have a vacancy on a board or committee and someone wants to apply for that, then they submit a letter to the city clerk, and the city clerk brings it to the council as an item, and that person is asked to come and appear.
I'd be okay with that if you guys are.
I'd be okay with that.
Mr. Kinsella, do you have any?
No, I like that idea, and I also agree with Mr. McCleary that adding this layer is more red tape. We want involvement from our citizens, and I believe the city is small enough that if a citizen has a hidden agenda, the city's small enough, we will hear about it most likely, and we can stop it.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, they are advisory boards, so not that they're not important. I do very much value their opinion, but that's just another level of security. If for some reason, if the board is stacked, that's not the board, that's not the ultimate decision maker at the end of the day, and we could theoretically see it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, but the more objective those opinions are from the boards, the much more weight they should carry, or the much more use they are to us.
No, I very much value all of the
Right,
board's
right.
input, so it is critical, but I think the disclosure is valuable and should be enough.
So is it okay if there's a motion for not only disclosure, but to have the person on a council agenda come in, or an agenda item come in, appear, so we can make sure if there's any pending applications, that there's no connection between the application and the board member sitting
Now, are
on
we
that
going to do
particular-
this just for boards or boards and committees?
We do it for both.
Should be for both,
Okay.
in my opinion. You okay with that, Mr. Kinsella?
I think so.
Do we need to vote, or can we go by consensus?
I would recommend that you vote on that.
Okay.
So you need a motion.
Motion and a second, yes, ma'am.
I'm concerned about your disclosure portion of it. I'm figuring that it should go to the committee chairman to vet their own applicants and then bring the applicants before the council.
And that's the motion?
Well, that would be my motion, yes.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, before we vote, this is an item that's open for public comment. There was someone that signed up for board and committee policy discussion, which was Mrs. Rodriguez, but I think you meant to sign up for the other one, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, is there anyone else that wants to speak from the general public? Mrs. Burke, come on up. Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we put it into the record, let's hand it out and see what it is first, and then the council can. Thank you.
Thank you.
While they're reading that, I can go ahead and start reading the same thing so everybody else can hear. On August the 20th, a letter was sent out to all members of city boards and committees asking if they wanted to be reappointed. This is an annual requirement according to Port Richey Charter Article 8. This letter was required to be returned to City Hall by September the 25th. I am on the CAC committee, so I returned my letter. I learned then at that time that 3 members were not appointed to the Planning and Zoning Committee. So on October 5th, I sent an email to Sal asking that I be considered for an appointment. This was put on the agenda for the next council meeting on October the 13th. That would have been the first council meeting to be held after the renewals to the boards and the committees. Per Article 8, the council shall by majority vote appoint members and alternates to boards and committees from those nominated. All those vacancies shall be filled by the same nominating and confirmation process within 60 days of a permanent vacancy. On October 13th, the council meeting was held. Sal submitted my name, and in a five vote, I was appointed to the Planning and Zoning Board. So the mayor is speaking about me. There was an opening, and I put my name in. At the time, I didn't know that there were any applications. I had heard rumors about a project, but I myself did not know about application. The mayor said he did not know there was an application, so how would I have known? The first I saw the application was after I was put on the board and I was sent a packet. Almost 2 months later, on December 8th, at the council meeting, the mayor, at 24 minutes and 30 seconds into the meeting, said, and then another thing I wanted to bring up is our committees. I want to address and put it on our next agenda, is an item which would be hopefully, depending on how we vote tonight and into the new year, and kind of set some policy. We had a citizen that jumped on a committee while there were pending applications, and then we're involved in that process, and I think we should address that and potentially make policies that don't allow our citizens to engage in committee activity while there's pending applications that should be kind of passed on down the road. And really, the idea is to prevent citizens from getting on a committee for the purpose for their own personal issues, as opposed to for the furtherance of the city and so on and so forth. So I wanted to address that, but I felt that it would be more appropriate just to set it for an agenda item until January. You guys okay with that? And the aim is to set a policy so we can regulate that. That's what I want to discuss if we can. Mr. Sossman, are you okay with that? 25 minutes late, it ended. As I was the only one recently added to a board that dealt with an application, it was apparent to anyone who pays attention to city functions that Scott Tremblay was referring to me. In fact, I immediately received text messages concerning his statement after he finished speaking, saying he was talking to me. Can I continue?
Yes, you can finish, of course.
First, his accusation that I had jumped on a committee. This was a purposely false statement, as jumping on committees is obviously not the process, and he was one of the 5 that voted for my appointment. Upon the yearly reappointments, I had immediately put my name back in for consideration, learning that 3 persons didn't ask for reappointment. I had been waiting for, this is not in the paperwork, but I had been waiting for a position to open up. And I did that at the yearly time once 3 people did not reapply. Tremblay made a claim that I was getting on a committee for the purpose of my own personal issues. I would like an explanation for that statement, as he has no idea of my thoughts, as none were ever expressed to him. I have tried as best I can to be a contributing member of this community. I've been a member of the CAC for well over a year. I participated in all that has affected Port Richey, including the recall, the mayor's race, council races, fighting to save our city, backing our city departments, including fire and police. I run 2 groups and 1 page promoting Port Richey and helping to keep our citizens informed. Anything that happens in Port Richey affects me along with every other citizen. This city is 2.1 square miles in land coverage. It's almost impossible not to be affected by whatever happens here. I have volunteered many hours toward this city, and I ask why the mayor not only questioned my good intentions to serve my community, but went so far as to publicly accuse me of doing something that was not in the best interest of Port Richey and its citizens.
Is that all you have, Mrs. Burke?
That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
No.
Anything? Mr. Kinsella?
None.
Okay. And with that, anyone else signed up or want to speak? Mr. Burke, come on up.
Kenneth Burke, Port Richey. Good evening and thank you for this time. This agenda item is a moot point. Has no basis on this agenda for discussion. It has been added to the agenda based on accusations towards one of our citizens for wanting to be on a board to lobby for a particular outcome for personal reasons. This accusation is based on empty, slanderous assumptions. There's not one shred of proof or evidence. Nothing. It is an assumption. Every one of you sitting up here are on your positions for a personal reason, or for the betterment of the city, or for wanting to help Port Richey move forward in a positive and progressive manner. Being part of our city boards is an honor. It's a privilege. I'm on the Land Use Committee, which unfortunately hadn't met in 2 years because we had a city manager that didn't want to have it or have any part of it. So, you know, I think that the committee, you guys, to go ahead with this, you are basing this on an assumption. You are slanderously basing this on an assumption of one of our citizens who has obviously proven that they believe in the city and do things for this city, to move this city in a progressive forward motion. Furthermore, and she has already done this, she does have the right to face her accuser on such a slanderous assumption. And I will repeat that again, a slanderous assumption. There is no proof. None. Let me leave you with some facts. Since September, there's been 2 people put on a committee or a board. 2, and only one with an application before them. And even the mayor didn't know that application existed because he voted in a unanimous decision to put that person on the board. Whose fault is that? It surely wasn't hers. And she did not get on that board for any kind of personal gain. What did she have to gain? You have nothing to go on. So to do this, you're walking a very fine line, accusing a citizen of Port Richey getting on a board for personal reasons and a personal gain, for a personal outcome. It's an assumption. We all know what they say about assumptions. There's possible consequences from this. Mark my words. Do not put slanderous assumptions before this board. It has no meaning at all here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Mrs. Scherer, welcome.
Sherry Scherer, 7802 Davis Street. I don't agree, respectfully, with your decision there because it's one person as part of a group. So even if one person has an objection, I think that's a valued information that everybody could share, bounce it off other ones. So to put stipulations on one person when they're just part of a group doesn't seem quite right to me. I'm on your BOA. I'm very happy to be there. This will be my 2nd year serving, even though I think we had 1 meeting, which you disagreed with our decision. So it's not something that's the be-all, end-all if one person is going to get on a board because they're concerned about something in their community. Doesn't mean that they're going to just stop there. because I'm concerned with all of Port Richey, not just one area. So I just think it's a wrong decision, and some people are hot on the topic, but when you step back and take a look at it, it's one person as part of a group making decisions or ideas bounced off one of another. And I think it's good to have that. You don't want to have a group of like-minded people all using the same decision. You need some banter back and forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I get to you, as a matter of housekeeping, there was a typewritten statement or exhibit that was provided to the council, and I wanted by consensus to admit this in to the records, for the city records, if any objections.
No objections.
No objection.
Mr. Kinsella?
I agree.
Okay.
I'm good.
So can we show this as a part of the record?
We'll get a copy as well.
Okay, thank you. I saw another hand. Welcome, come on up. Ms. Rogers, how are you doing this evening?
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. As the Chair of Board of Adjustments, former member of the Planning and Zoning and our Historical Committee, I think you're just putting another roadblock in getting volunteers to work on our committees and boards. In all these years, we've never had a real issue. If there was a conflict of interest, that person stepped away, did not take part in the discussion unless they did it as a citizen in the audience. So I don't see any reason to go forward with anything like this. It just makes it that much more difficult for us to get citizens to help. You know, we have rules, we have laws. When you're on the board or committee, you have to follow those. I have approved things that I did not approve of because there was a law that I had to pay attention to, not my personal feelings. So in that instance, this is just a waste of time.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Anyone else? Seeing no hands, before we go back, go ahead.
You know, I just took in some of the comments that we received, and I think we have to put a certain level of trust in our citizens overall for this, that they're working for the betterment of their city by being on a board. And kind of listening to this, and let's separate the most recent issue that was brought up as part of this. Holistically, we have to trust our citizens, they trust us. Without that, you know, we're not going to get very far here, even as a small city. We're really trying to address a problem that, I'll take it on good faith, has not happened. And do we really want to push more red tape, even if it's the extent that, yes, you have to come and be interviewed by us? Well, really, what are we going to gain from them in a 5-minute interview as part of an agenda session? If I was dedicated enough to put my time in to try and jump on a board to stop something, do you think a 5-minute interview and me BSing you guys to get around that is really going to stop that? Probably not. And to say, well, you can't join the board because you live across the street from something that is a pending agenda item, that's a little bit of discrimination. So now I'm stopping you from joining a board because of where you live or whatever else. We're starting to go down a little bit of a tricky road here that I don't think we really want to.
But that's not what I was getting at. I was saying that they could, not that they couldn't be on the board, that they just couldn't sit for that particular agenda item. That's all. Or that particular item.
Again, but then we're taking this person who wants to join the board and pushing them off until, all right, well, yeah, you can join, but we don't want you right now. You know, it could be several months because there's zoning issues, and they can drag out. I've seen them drag out.
Yeah, but by having disclosure and just asking them about it, if there's no issues, then there's no problems. And I think that's what the motion in the second was.
Again, then that goes back to the person already on the board. This issue, this Washington Street issue, was a 2-2 split. So let's say Ms. Burke voted against it. Still one other person voted against it who was already on the board. you're still getting a citizen's opinion, and we didn't listen to them anyway.
Well, correct, because there wasn't an opinion, it just was what it was.
But
Sure.
even if they had voted against it, you know, it was passed by a 5-0 unanimous consent. So obviously, even the lack of a decision didn't sway anybody on the council meeting. So I don't think we should start tampering with a problem that we don't have, and I don't think we should put additional roadblocks on getting our citizens involved in our city. And I think we have to put some trust in our citizens, that they're doing the right thing, that they're doing the best for.
Well, I think you should trust the citizens, but I think you should safeguard as well, and just simple disclosures do a lot of that, and that was probably the main thing that I was bringing to the table here.
We've had a lot of trouble in the past getting people to be on the committees, and it has always been my purpose on this council to get the boards and committees up and working so that we did have their advice and we did know what was going out in the community. I don't see any problem with any person, whether they've got an interest in a project or not, that wants to be on a committee, that they make their application to the committee, the chairman talks to them, they make a decision to go through with it, they come up here and they say, hi, I'm really interested in doing this. That just proves to me they're interested in doing that. And that's really all I really want, is people on these committees and these boards that want to be there, that are not, now if they're doing it for some special interest thing, they'll be gone in no time anyway. So, you know, I don't see it as a problem. I just think we should just let them come in, put their applications in, let them talk to the chairman of the board or the committee, and then come up and say, I'm really interested in doing this. Give us a couple of minutes to go, where do you live? How long you lived here? What is your interest in this? Do you have a background? Just to find out who they are. And I just don't see a problem with that. It's just people trying to help the city, and I think we should continue to support that.
I agree.
I was just going to say, like I said earlier, I think that the citizens have enough. If they have to recuse themselves for a reason, they would just do that, just like any of us would if it impacted us. So I think that, like what you said, if they report to their committee head, they introduce themselves to council, that'd be it. And we have to give, like you said, we have faith in them. If they have a conflict, they'll recuse themselves. Say, hey, I have a conflict in this. So.
And any chairman will ask that person if possibly they should recuse themselves from it. But I don't think it's a big issue. I just don't. I think that the citizens should be able to go onto a committee because they want to, and they want to contribute to this city. If they have an interest in it, I mean, I got to admit, the only reason why I ran was because I had a variance that had already gone through, but I was upset with the way that the city was being run. So let them come and work. Let them come and do what they have and contribute. I don't see any reason why if they have an interest because of a project that's going on across the street, that's a valuable opinion. We should have that, you know? It's not changing. It's not changing. They're still going to come. We're just asking them to come in and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I want to be on, you know, the historical committee, which we've got a lot of vacancies on that one.
Mr. Kinsella.
Is that an advertisement for a historical committee?
Before we vote, I wanted to know if you had any other comments.
Yeah, I, as the other council members, we need these volunteers. Historically, with the city, with the bad publicity we've gotten, we've gone another direction that we need to get out of. The fact that we have citizens that are willing to donate their time and improve this city, I'm all for that any way we can. I have to say, when I read this agenda and I saw this discussion, I was quite surprised, not knowing what direction was going to go. And honestly, at this point, I'm disappointed that this is even being discussed. And I think we need to stop this issue and move forward. And again, I'm just disappointed. and this was even brought up.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second at this point. We can put it to a vote.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
How did I say it?
That the applicant apply to the leader of the committee or head of the committee.
Apply to the city, come through Sal, apply to the city clerk, and that would be sent to the chairperson who would contact them, and then they would come in and say, I want to be on this committee.
So there really is no change then.
No.
Than appearing before us
Well,
for introduction. Him coming in is a change, other than the introduction. Him coming in is a change.
And, okay. And then the disclosure part, I think that you said that there would be any.
Actually, disclosure isn't that important to me.
Okay,
So we don't have.
okay. So the motion, just to clarify, was that the person that's applied would talk to the,
Chairman of the board or the committee,
and then it'd be put on an agenda item and they would come before us when we vote.
just to say hello.
just the point of clarity, does the chairman of the board or committee have any say in whether that person
No.
can join? No. So strictly it's, hi, how you doing? This is the board, this is what the board does. Are you interested in this? If you are,
That's
still
all
are.
that a chairman should be doing is this is what my board and committee is doing. Is this what you want to participate in? And if they're interested, because some people don't have any idea what the Board of Adjustment does, or the Planning and Zoning Committee does, or the Historical Society does, or committee. But I'm just saying, they should just be able to come in and just say hello. There's nothing wrong with having a face to put, even if it's got a mask on, you know, with that person's name. I mean, they want to be part of the city by participating in a board and committee, so why is there an objection to them coming in and saying hello?
Now, on reappointments, do they have?
Reappointments are, they can do that as long as they want to. They
Okay,
have
so
for
that doesn't
years.
have to be done on a yearly basis?
It is done on a yearly basis.
No, I
There's
mean,
an ordinance
the
on
coming
that.
before council doesn't have to be
Oh,
done?
no,
Oh.
no, new members,
Right.
not old members.
Okay, so the motion's for the, just new members only
New members only,
to come before council.
to come to their, to submit their letter to the city clerk, and it goes to the chairman of the committee or the board, and then they come before us to say, this is what I want to do.
And there's a motion and a second. So at this time, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Move on to the next item. Next item is going to be presentation of ordinance 21-681. And I'm going to pass that to our city attorney.
Excuse me. This it will be the first reading of an ordinance, and this is the Washington Street project. Just so everybody understands, if you have any questions, those general conditions are now in the middle, you know, in the body of the ordinance. There was some specifics, if you remember. I added them at the end. I believe I tell you that additional conditions number 28 through 32, some overlapped, are a little more specific in what's in there. So unless anybody has any questions, I'll read this by title only. This is ordinance number 21-681, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Richey, Florida. Could we, so I could read this for the record?
Yes.
Okay. So you could tell them to take the conversation outside, please.
Hey, guys, can you step outside, please? Thank you.
I'll start again. Ordinance number 21-681, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Richey, Florida, amending the official zoning map by changing the zoning district designation of property from R3 multiple family residential and C1 community commercial to PUD planned unit development for the property located at 7616 Washington Street containing 35.95 acres more or less. Conflict severability at an effective date. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance number 21-681.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Move on to item number 7, presentation of resolution 21-01. City Attorney, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the resolution that council wanted regarding renaming the WOD, or at least giving it a name. It's somewhat ceremonial more than legal. Cody River Landing, I hope I got that right. I took a few liberties in preparing this, and I just point this out since I've done these kind of resolutions before. If you look at over at just outside of Mr. Sossaman's office, you'll see when we used to do this in the past, long paper with parchment with gold seals on it. It looks real nice. You could make this kind of, and I wrote this thinking you might want to do that and then hand these out. Do you understand what I mean? You could hand them to the businesses, things like that, okay? So that's why I kind of wrote it a little more, so I could change anything you want. Anybody have any questions concerning it?
I think that's a great idea to hand out business down there, everybody.
And potentially post it at a couple different places if we can.
Yeah, I actually spent a lot of time on this. You'd be surprised that some other cities do things like this. So, I mean, you know, you don't have to make that decision now. You understand what I mean? Just pass the resolution, but you can always change it if you wanted to. You read it next week and say, I don't like it. But do you know what I'm talking about? Because I could go get it. You know, they're long and they look nice. So having said that, I'll read resolution number 2101 by title only, a resolution of the City of Port Richey, Florida, designating and authorizing a portion of the City of Port Richey, locally known as the quote-unquote WOD, to now be known as Cody River Landing. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve resolution 21-01.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to go on to the next item, which is number 8. It's a discussion of outdoor fire pits. I think this was an issue that came up, and I think Vice Mayor Dittmer had asked to place this on for discussion, and I wanted to pass this discussion item over to Mr. Dittmer.
Yeah, this came through a citizen, and I know how much I use an outdoor fire pit in my property up in Georgia. I use it all the time. And I think that if we approve, if it has a chimney or a screen on it, and they're not burning trash, obviously, I think that's something that we should allow in the city, especially the few cold nights that we get to actually sit by a fire. It's nice to be able to do it. So I'd like to see that made available to the homeowners if it's a commercial fire pit with the chimney or a screen cover that can be used in the yard.
I wouldn't go as far as a commercial pit, but a screened fire pit or something of that nature, using cut lumber for fuel as opposed to lawn debris. I'm all for that as well.
Yeah, I think the lawn debris is actually specified already. You can't burn trash.
Yeah, you can't do it, yeah.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
also states in there you can't burn cut wood.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the point. So.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to tweak that. I mean, I live in Hudson, and I've been burning for 40 years. I get it. The downside of it is the other. Is that me?
I think it's your other radio that's
But the issues that come up routinely in the county where I work, in Pasco County where I spent the last 33 years working, some of the issues that come up are we get complaints from neighbors, smoke complaints. So you have a fire pit going and you have your kids outside and you're roasting marshmallows or whatever you're doing, and then a neighbor complains, smoke, it's getting in my house, I can't keep my windows open, I'm trying to enjoy the nice outside air. So you get these complaints. What the county has is a copy of basically the state open burning laws. I brought a copy if you guys want to look at them.
Can we put that in?
What this is, it's a warning notice, but on the notice, the way we wrote it, we included all the state statute guidelines that require. So if you want to have outdoor burning, you have to be, just going to give you some numbers, you have to be 25 foot from the property line, and you got to be 25 foot from your own residence, then you got to be 50 foot from the roadway, and you got to be 150 foot from any occupied residence other than your own.
We just
Which-
eliminated our entire city.
Thank you. I know. And it's written that way really because it's not supposed to be burning going on inside, and then again, what constitutes burning? I mean, yard debris. It says palm fronds in there, but can I burn, pine limbs? It doesn't say pine limbs, it doesn't say you can't, but it does say in our ordinance to cut wood. So it would have to be, again, as the fire chief and as a father, I'm all for outdoor burning in fire pits. But, we probably have to put some time into this to try to word it the way you guys would feel comfortable with it. And then, again, at which point do we have the teeth in it to tell somebody, put it out? Your neighbor has asthma and they're complaining and it becomes a health hazard. How big of a fire pit? So you said, a commercial grade fire pit with a lid on it. Well, I don't have the money to buy a commercial grade fire pit. I'm going to build my own. Why can't I build my own? And how big can I build it?
That was my point, because if you don't say commercial, somebody's gonna build one that's 15 feet in diameter.
And that's what happens. There's all these.
They gotta put a screen on it, so.
Yeah. Yep. Well then, okay, what constitutes a screen? Because I'm telling you, this is what I ran into for 33 years. I had somebody put a cow pasture fence over top, and the holes are this big. I'm like, well, the purpose of the screen to the normal person is to stop the embers from flying, but we don't have a definition of what a screen over or a mesh means. So again, if it's something you guys are interested in, I mean, we could probably play with this, use this as a guideline, because that's state statute to go by, and then anything you want to do, on your end.
I'd like to sit down and tweak it and get all the stuff right, but I do want to see it because it's such a nice thing to have.
It is.
And,
It is.
And I feel back, I got a couple, everybody probably got the emails about it. And I know I enjoy it when I'm at my property. I don't do it much. I do have one of those big chimney ones, but I don't use it here.
You know how horrible it is to pull up in a fire truck and go to somebody that's having an outdoor s'mores,
Yeah, you've done it to me, I remember.
Yeah.
And
see?
spray their whole yard
And tell
down.
them, we got to put it out. And
Yeah.
it's,
I know.
but there has to be the discretion.
Well,
'cause-
let's proceed that way. Let's put it on and let's get some.
Yeah, let's
you
work
help.
Let's
Let's
and
work it.
you guys work together and.
Let's put something comprehensive
Mayor,
together.
could I
Yes,
say
please.
something? I need to explain some of the legal things here. You're going in two very different directions, and I think there's a basic rudimentary misunderstanding here. This burning code that we have is the burning of refuse, no garbage, refuse, trash, or other discarded matter, which includes trees and other vegetation, not logs. So that's a burning code. This is a burning code for refuse. So you can't take your leaves and rake them up and burn them. You can't, it's the city of Port Richey, you can't take your garbage if you don't want to pay for garbage removal and burn it. That's what this is about, and it's what this is about. That's a different issue than burning something for enjoyment. Known as a fire pit code. We don't have one. Bigger cities have one. That's something very different.
So what we're looking at is.
So hang on a second. I'm not sure what we're talking about here, what the issue is. But this, when you read it, is the yard waste was generated. The open burning is conducted where the material was generated. This is just a little more specific than this. The way it works, and this is probably the third or fourth time this come up. So some places do not have fire pit, enjoyment fires, okay? You're gonna say, well, how is that regulated? Well, that's regulated, and Chief probably knows a lot more than I do, but state statute, the chiefs of the county or any municipality, that'd be our chief, okay? Authorized to enforce this chapter, that's fire prevention and control. So the way it's been done in the past, and correct me if I make a mistake, somebody invites 10 friends over and they get some cinder blocks and they start burning some wood for enjoyment to sit around. It gets too big, you shut them down. Embers go in the air. So he has all the power to cite people for all kinds of things. So I guess what I'm saying is, what I'm hearing is, do you want to regulate refuse burning?
No.
Okay, so then this has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
And this statute has nothing to do with it. I had pointed out to the administration before this meeting.
So
So now the question is, if you want to talk about enjoyment fires, do you want a fire pit?
Correct.
Ordinance?
Yes. That's what
So
we're talking about.
then the chief and I, we'd have to sit down and see other places. He could probably knows a lot more about it, how big you could make it and what times you can do it and stuff. If that's what you want.
Yeah, I think the confusion is right now, and the understanding is that there's no open fires in Port Ritchie for enjoyment, for refuse burning, for anything.
Oh, no, it's just the opposite. This is what Port Ritchie has voted down that numerous times in the past. They don't want any ordinance. I'm just telling
Yeah.
you. They want to have, you want an enjoyment fire, you
Well,
can have it.
I have a lot of citizens, I think you had it as well, where people are coming and says, can I have an open fire? And the answer was undetermined. And what we're trying to do is, so we can say, yes, you can have an enjoyment fire in your property and put it and codify it so everyone understands it.
Well, see, it gets difficult for the chief. And so in other words, there are standards in the state fire code, okay? And so and he could probably tell you them better than I can. If embers start going in the air and if it becomes too big,
then we put it at his discretion ultimately.
Ultimately, it's his discretion.
Yeah, and we can codify it that way. What I'm trying to do
When you say
is
codified, it's already codified.
well, and that's fine. But what I'm trying to do is be able to tell our citizens, yes, you can have an enjoyment fire, and there's no question to
No,
that.
and I guess what I'm leading to is you might want to have the chief give this little thought. He might want to put certain parameters that he
Yeah.
uses and simplifies it as opposed to passing a code, because it's kind of a hard thing, right? I mean, some people will make a fire for marshmallows 2 inches from their front door. People do that, but
That's
there's
the
broad-
hard part, is putting the teeth in behind whatever we decide to set up and
Well,
come with.
in other words, that's exactly where I'm going.
I know.
And
I
I'm
know.
saying no. I'm saying no. We're not talking about teeth here. We're talking about what teeth you're going to do with the fire code that exists. Because once you get past that and you want to pass a code, then we're going to have to get into being, it could only be 1.5 feet high, and you can only, you know what I mean? And you want to get into all of that, that's up to you.
And then you have, there's other situations that
So
people
I
end up
guess it's
with
like
their own.
anything else, it's gray, you understand what I mean? It's like certain words are gray in it. And so we need to know, just like the million things that Mr. Foss does, it's gray. So whatever the standard you generally apply. Some cities, if that thing gets bigger than this, he's gonna be knocking on your door. Some cities, it's this big. So what are those general parameters? You wanna start codifying them, it's up to you.
Well, let me ask this question. So, obviously we're talking about enjoyment fire versus
Reasonable fires, small fires.
correct, but we already have the code that allows it.
No. This code doesn't allow anything. That's what I keep saying.
No,
I
this-
recommended this not be. This is just an anti-burning of refuse.
Correct, but there's nothing that prohibits enjoyment fires within
That's
the city.
correct. Our code has nothing on it. Doesn't allow it. It's void.
So what happens now, which has always happened in the past, is the fire department has discretion to go out and regulate that. And
Correct.
So I guess what I'm getting is I don't know why we want to change that.
Well, they're not changing it, but people are asking, and that's a reasonable
And
request.
we don't have a direct answer. That's,
Well, the answer
Right.
is it's left up to the discretion of the fire chief in light of the state fire code, and he's going to determine what's
What's safe and not safe?
And part of the
There you
problem, so Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so calls up and says, can I have an enjoyment fire in my backyard? And we're essentially going to say, maybe.
Well, then you could just start to regulate it if you want.
The ordinance, the way it's written right now, is in section 26-5. It states, no garbage, refuge, trash, discarded matter, including trees, vegetation, right, shall be burned, and it says, in an open pit, or an incinerator, or a furnace, or similar device directly upon property. So that includes a chimney or a fire pit,
I got it, but
right? I'm just making sure I read that the way you read it.
no, you don't. Look, I'll do it again. This.
No, not that. I'm not reading that.
I understand, sir. No garbage, refuge, trash, or other discarded matter. So what this is, the burning of junk.
Right.
There's no burning of junk, which is and this here is the yard waste was generated, the open burning is conducted, the fire, this is This is for the burning of materials. A fire from enjoyment is not covered by this burning. Neither is this. Okay? That's not what this is. This is, you can't get rid of your garbage man and say, I'm gonna burn my stuff in the backyard. That's what this ordinance is.
So if Will brings his chimney down from Georgia and sets it up in his backyard and gets some cut wood, he can burn it without,
If he's sitting around for enjoyment to do it, as long as it doesn't violate the state fire codes.
because
The way I read this, I would tell them to put it out.
they
Every
have
fire-
come by
so
and
if there
told
was
me to
just
put it out.
marshmallows there, you tell them to put it out.
That's the way I read
They
this.
have come by and told me to put it
The
out.
way I
Oh,
read the city
I don't
ordinance.
doubt that they have, but I'm just telling you, if you got cited with this code violation, Judge Gray isn't gonna find anybody guilty, because he knows it too.
I prefer not to go before Judge Gray.
Yeah, no. Do you see where I'm going?
I just want people to be able to have fire pits, but we
Yeah,
gotta figure
Believe me,
this out.
this isn't some opinion of mine. I
Well-
mean, cities deal with, do you want to, and I'm believe me, I don't care what you do
Well,
one way or
maybe
the
we
other.
just clarify that code a little bit to just better say, okay, well, if it's cut lumber, then I'm okay, or something along those, or purchased lumber, or something
I
along
don't
those
know
lines.
if you can make it any clearer than no garbage, refuse, trash, or other discarded matter.
Because cut logs are not discarded items.
What's that?
Cut logs are not discarded
That's
items.
correct, including trees or other vegetation and burned in an open pit, incinerator, furnace, of
Then
course.
put 3 words, excluding cut or purchased lumber, and from that.
It's the intent of the user is the problem. Look, if you want to burn, if you want to clean up your backyard and take your refuse from the corners over where it's laying and build all this wood up and burn it, but you don't want to call the junk man and take it out and put it out in the garbage or leave us to pick it up, you can't burn it in the backyard. You want to take that exact same thing and burn 4 pieces of it with your friend drinking a glass of wine, you can. And what's the difference? The purpose.
Okay.
You
So,
see that.
all right, so then going forward, the chief, if he gets called and he goes back there and sees it's a chimney or it's a fire pit with a screen on it, he can say, good to go.
If it satisfies
Right,
him.
if it satisfies him.
In terms of the state code. Now, if the state code is very loose, he doesn't feel comfortable with that, then he can cut it here, but it's not changing the words here. It's saying there will be no fire,
Right.
if there is a fire at all. That's what this is.
If I may, I'm comfortable with where we're at now, where they just have the discretion if it's safe or not safe within the state code.
Well, the problem is nobody knows. I mean, generally what people used to, you know, you get 20 people over for the weekend, and you don't sit there and make a fire that's going to the roof, he's going to shut them down.
Yeah, and he should.
And he should.
Yeah, but there's nothing that stops that now from happening.
Every chief has had this problem since they've come here.
Yeah.
You know, generally they'll go out there, but we're not going to let wildfires, if it's, you know, you want to start getting into regulating how big that pit can be. That's what, it's not what
Right.
you're burning, it's why you're doing it and how big it is. If you want to get into that, you can. But otherwise, you know, how big a pit? I mean, the way if somebody calls City Hall, you can have an outside fire, but it can't be real big, and if it gets out of control, our fire chief's going to put you in jail and fine you. But you can do that too. He's got all that power. It's whatever you want to do. Otherwise, you're going to have to start
Well, I
getting
think-
it
I
to, it's
think
got to
that-
be in an enclosed area, it's got to be in a chimney, you want to get into all that.
I think in the future, if we have these phone calls, that you can have an enjoyment fire in your backyard, but it will be regulated by the fire department.
Anything that's burning, he regulates for
That's-
whatever purpose.
There you go. So he can go back there and go, yep, that's in a covered pit with a screen on top of it, you're good to go.
Oh,
Have it if you please, the fire chief.
Basically.
pretty much, yeah, that's right.
I just want to clarify, because we kept crossing boundaries between open burning and recreational burning. So make sure the way you read the city ordinance that's in the Muni Code, the way you interpret it legally, again, that's your cup of tea. The way you interpret that, you would allow people to burn in a fire pit outside for recreationally, and that would be okay?
Absolutely, that's not what this is prohibiting.
Okay, and then leave the
That
rest of the
doesn't-
discretion to me and my crew?
Right now, believe me, we've been
So
down
you
this
got
road
that, and
numerous
you
times.
got that. Good.
That's right. Right now, it's totally in your discretion. This is serious.
I'm teasing them.
I'm not. It's totally your interpretation of the state fire marshal's code.
And I get that.
But it contradicts what I read here. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the outdoor burning. If you were to ask me what I would really like I would like a minor alteration in the verbiage in the city's code. But if you're telling me legally that the way that's read, they can burn in a fire pit, I'm good with it. Then leave the rest of the discretion to the fire crews to make sure that things are within reason.
This isn't
I'm
a
good.
code that says you can burn in a fire pit. This is something that you can't burn refuse, things of refuse, that's all. The city has nothing regarding enjoyment burning. That's what we have.
So you
We're
can-
stuck with the state code, up to you.
I'm good with
If
that.
you feel the state code's not enough, then you can come back with restrictions, not changing to this refuse thing, and say, I can pull for you 500 fire pits with the towns that have those restrictions. This is some theory of mine. Cities say you can't have a burning pit outside. Rural places say you can. And I can bring you both codes, but it's surely not this code. This is a different code.
Understood.
All right, sorry. I think we're clear.
Got it.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Any further discussion motions?
I don't think so.
Mr. Kinsella, I don't know, nobody's given you the floor yet on this issue.
No, I was listening, thank you.
Okay.
Going in the right direction.
Okay. And there's nobody signed up for this, but there's a lot of people from the general public here. Anybody want to speak to outdoor fire pits? Seeing no hands, we'll move on. We'll just close that discussion at this time, unless there's any further discussion or motion of council. Okay. The next item is the police department agreement with the Vela Bay Townhome Subdivision. And I don't know if this is going to go probably to our captain for introduction. Or, okay.
It's an agreement with the Vela Bay. State statute allows for an agreement with a private road to cover traffic control only. Okay, everybody thinks that we can go in there and police. The police department can go on to any road which is generally used by the public and do anything. Okay, I mean, that's a road and a private road. They can go down it all day long and arrest people. What this does is it allows us to enforce traffic regulations there. And so any signs they put up, they'd have to come back and say, is this sign good? Can we put a stop sign here? You good with that? Yeah, we'll make it 15 miles an hour. And then we can begin to enforce that for them. And also if they wanted, well, we'd like, some of the early delivery people are speeding in the morning. We'd like you to, post a car here. Well, they can pay for that. Okay, we charge them a certain amount of money on the standard rates in here. And this is pretty standard form. It's one the county uses. I think Hernando County, we took it from, made some changes. We kind of had them sign it already, getting it to their board and everything, so it's just waiting for your signature unless you have any questions.
Motion to approve agreement between the city of Fort Ritchie and the Vela Bay Townhomes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item passes. Move on to the next item. Police Department surplus of equipment. I'm going to pass that to our captain.
Yes, sir. As you're aware, the past couple of months, we've been going through various sections of the department and the storage units and inventory and going through old equipment. The items before you are some of the original tasers that we had started with in the department in 2004. They're an outdated version. They are no longer supported by Taser Company. They've already been replaced by newer versions of the device. Some of them are still functional, some are not functional. So what we're asking for here is that we declare them surplus so that we can get rid of them and see if we can find a new home for them and go from there.
Okay. Looking for a motion.
Motion to dispose of the surplus taser equipment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to move on to old business. I'm going to start with Mr. Kinsella, since Mr. Kinsella is here with us by telephone.
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay?
I have one item, I'd like to see if we can get back the business orders on the Forty River Landing businesses, have another workshop. Get an article, put something together with that. Thank you.
I have nothing.
No old business here. All right, that's all we have.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.